Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Kyra. If you're new here, very special welcome to you, and a welcome to you all to my collection series. This is a series I like to do at least once a year just to share with you guys what is lurking around in my makeup drawers. Partially to sort of take stock of what's lurking in my collection, partially to give you guys a chance to see what I have, request videos if there's something you want to see more out of, if you want to see a more dedicated review. All of these videos do contain little teeny tiny bite-sized reviews on the products. I'm including a lot of swatches in these videos as well, so I hope you will enjoy that aspect. I really love filming these videos, and I hope you'll understand that this is in no way, shape, or form me bragging about my makeup, how much I have, what type of makeup that I have. This is just kind of a way to be able to document where my collection is at this point in time, for me to be able to refer back to these videos and see, you know, comparison wise where my collection might be in the future, as well as to be able to refer you guys to these videos if you have any questions about what blushes I might have, swatches on things, miniature reviews like I said. So I hope you guys will enjoy this series as much as I do. There is also some decluttering in these videos, but it's nothing like outrageous. I'm not getting rid of like 30% of my collection or anything like that. Just products that I know that I need to pass on to others or declutter because they're too old for usage. But know that those products either are going to a new home or being recycled or donated and so on. And with all of that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the current collection video right now. Welcome to the best video of them all, unless you like lippies, in which case the next video will be the best one. But today we're getting into my eyeshadow palettes. I don't know yet if I'm going to do this in 1 or 2 videos, but there are a lot of them and I'm going to do my best to get through them as quickly as possible. And I do have a helper here today. My daughter Hannah is here to help handle all of this stuff. So we will have her here too. Say hi.
Hello, peoples.
All right, let's get started. I decided just to go ahead and pull out my smallest palettes first. So I'm gonna pull those out. Okay, these are all of my smallest palette. This is the e.l.f. Cream and Sugar Quad. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but there's some broken bits in here. That's okay, because I'm going to let go of this one anyways. I was just not super excited or impressed by this color story like I thought I was going to be, and in comparison to the other 2 I own. So I'm going to go ahead and declutter that right off the bat. Then the 2 that aren't going anywhere are the Rosewater Quad. It's super pretty. I love this pink right here. It's very unassuming but very impactful. And then my favorite, and the one that my daughter Hannah picked up for me, is this one in Pumpkin Pie. I may work on hitting pan in this bronze shade later this year because I love it so much and I'm getting there quickly anyways. So those are keepers. Another one that sadly I think I'm going to have to let go this year is the Huda Beauty Emerald Obsessions palette. I keep holding on to this partially because it's a beautiful gift from my beautiful friend Angela, but also just because I do like some of the shades in here. It's just not a green palette that I reach for. There's greens in my collection that I prefer, and I did not even reach for this one time in 2020, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this one go. Next, we have this little Winky Lux palette, and I've yet to use this one yet either. Hopefully I don't have to say that too many times during this video, but this is the Cashmere Kitten palette. It's very cool toned, but it looks absolutely stunning. This is actually like a really pretty duochrome shade, so I think this will be really fun to play with, and I might have to pull it into a Shop My Stash here in the winter time. Then I have this little Charlotte Tilbury quad here. I have a couple of her other palettes coming up later, but this is the Pillow Talk quad. If you've been around for a while, you might know that I was extremely disappointed in this quad, and I just don't think it's worth the cost, the $56 or whatever it is. But you never know, I might hate pan that later this year. And then another one that I have not really played with too much yet is this one from number 7. It's their Stay Perfect eyeshadow palette in the nude colorway. And these are really pretty. I think these would be really nice everyday shadows. This is a mostly shimmer palette, so it would be more of a companion palette, or maybe one shadow looks. One of the most surprising palettes of 2020 was the Maybelline Nudes of New York for me. I just love this, and it is so stinking good. Probably one of the best formulas I've tried at the drugstore, including over the e.l.f. Bite Size eyeshadow quads. But anyhow, love this palette. If you're looking for a good neutral palette, this is great. Before we jump into ColourPop, I have these two Viseart palettes. This is the Petite Pro 2. If you want to see somebody pan this palette and do a good job of it, go check out my girl Paula from A Beauty Guru Made Me Do It. I'll link her down below. She is working on panning this palette this year, and I cannot wait to watch her do it. But I do like this palette. It's one that I don't reach for enough, but it is really beautiful, and my hubby picked it out for me, so there's that. And then I also have the Viseart Paris Edit palette. This is one that I personally am working on getting some use out of this year. I'm working on these two colors right now, but you never know what I might work on in the future. But I just wanted to get some good use out of this, and I thought maybe it'd be a little easier to hit pan on these since they're small. All right, ColourPop, here we go. I don't know what to do about these two tie-dye palettes. I feel like maybe I'll wait until spring has come around and give these more of a chance, but I'm overall dissatisfied with this one and the In a Trance palette. First of all, they have these horrible pressed glitters that are no better than craft glitters. But then as you can see here, like this one is like coming out of its pan. They're very loose in there. I know Samantha March had problems with hers falling out of the palette, but those are definitely on the chopping block in springtime. This is really pretty too. I do love that they both have a Super Shock shadow involved. This is the one in this one. This has very chunky glitter, but I do really like some of these pinks and purples, and I do think they might be fun to play with come spring, so I'm going to keep it for now. And this collection just was like a whisper, and then it was gone, so I never did do like a dedicated review or anything. One of my favorite ColourPop palettes is the Going Coconuts palette. I don't love this white shade that's in here, but I do love this one called Cocoa Crush. It's just like the most stunning lid shade. I don't think you'll get a proper reflection there just because it's a cloudy, snowy day here, but this is a beautiful neutral palette and I really enjoy using it. We'll finish going through these little 9-pan palettes first. This is the ColourPop That's Taupe. I've only done a couple of looks with this so far, but I can tell you I do love the quality. It's a beautiful palette. I just love the cool tones in this one. So I'm really glad I picked it up, and I think it also would go nicely with the Going Coconuts palette, if you happen to already have it. And then this is the Making Mauves palette, and holy moly, there are some stunners in here. I just can't even with this palette. It's so pretty. So anywho, I love this. I love the colors, the mattes that they chose to put in here as well. They're just really perfect to go with the shimmers in here that, you know, you have some cooler options and a little bit warmer options as well. Then an early Christmas gift from my boy. I got the Star Wars Mandalorian The Child palette. This is so much fun to play with. This is the perfect green palette because I do have a couple of neutrals to sort of give the look some anchoring, so to speak. But then these three greens are actually really, really nice and easy to wear and a little bit less assuming, a little bit less difficult to work with than like your brighter greens. Love it. And then last of my 9-pan palettes is the Blush Crush palette. This is really beautiful as well. I love this shade down here, which is called How Rouge. And it is one of their sequin shades that has a little bit of glitter, but I don't mind. And I just love the incorporation of peach in here as well as plum. So I think this was a real well thought out palette. Coming back to the 12-pan palettes, my oldest ColourPop palette still in my collection is the Kathleen Lights and ColourPop Dream Street palette. Definitely a favorite in my collection. Definitely considering this shade for a possible shade to work on hitting pan on this year. It's one of my favorite transition shades in my collection, as well as this sort of plummy matte brown down here. But these shimmers are so beautiful, and I really wish that they would bring this back so that, you know, people who missed out could get it. Next is the At For Sight palette with Raw Beauty Christie in ColourPop. This is so pretty. I believe I did 4 looks with this one. I can't remember. Next is the URA QT palette. I love this one. I will say though that a lot of the looks do come out looking pink, even though you see some purple and even more neutral tones in here. They still have an undertone of pink. So if you're not a fan of pink, or you think you're getting a purple palette, maybe think again. I don't even know that this one's available anymore though, so maybe I don't even know what I'm talking about. But it is a pretty palette. I do enjoy it. And then another favorite in my collection is the Double Entendre palette. This is definitely more of your warm neutral palette, and I like having this for that purpose, and then the Going Coconuts and That's Taupe palettes for more cool tone or neutral toned neutrals. But anyhow, those are my ColourPop palettes. This is the Nubian palette. I think, is it called the Nubian Mini? And it's by Juvia's Place. This was such a surprise to me, and I'm so glad that it was. I actually won this from my girl. She's now Beauty and Life with Angela. Used to be Beauty by Angela, and I won this in a giveaway actually from her, and I absolutely adore this lid shade. So foiled and beautiful. It's just a nice little neutral palette too, so I love that. Next is the Nubian 3 Coral palette. This is not one I see a whole ton on YouTube, but I do love it for the contrast. There's a lot of cool and warm shades in this palette, and they're really well curated to actually pair with one another. So I think this was a really nicely thought out palette. I do enjoy it. This peach down here is just like out of bounds. So pretty. And almost like fluorescent, but peach. It's really beautiful. Then I have the Saharan palette, and I'm pretty sure I've never put this on my eyeballs, and I'm definitely going to do that. I think this shade is so cool. Definitely something that drew me to the palette, but overall I just think this has a lot of interest when looking at it. It's just not a color story that we see a whole ton. So I think this is really, really beautiful. Then I have the Deuce palette by Juvia's Place. This was my very first Juvia's Place palette, and it does have usage in it, unlike some of my other ones. But this is really beautiful. I love to use this pink shade as a blush when I use this palette. This is a pink and white duochrome up here at the top. It's just really quite an interesting color story, and I guess that's what we all love about Juvia's Place, but this one in particular strikes me as unique when standing up against the other Juvia's Place palettes that I own. Okay, then we have the Magic Mini. Whoa, slippery suckers. This is definitely my favorite, current favorite maybe, Juvia's Place palette. Again, really unique color story. Some of my favorite pastel kind of shimmers in my collection. They're very vibrant on the eyes. Love this beautiful soft blue in this palette. Love, love, love. This is a great palette. I highly recommend buying the mini if you do purchase this palette, because the regular size one is massive. And lastly, this is super duper new. I've only used this on my eyeballs once on my birthday just a few days ago, but this is the Nomad by Juvia's Place. And this is a palette I've wanted for quite a long time. You know, if you know me very well, you'll know why. This is like my color story. These are the colors that I like to have in my home as decor. And so it only stands to reason that I would pick this one up. I love to wear green. My favorite color is yellow, and on and on. So you can call it the Nomad palette, but I might call it the Kyra palette. And then lastly, this is my one and only palette by Blush Tribe, which is no longer a brand anymore, unfortunately. But I do love me some Paulina, and this is a Paulina palette. And this again has some very unique shades, and specifically to my collection. Love this shade called Friends, and this lavender, and this really cool green up here called Soli. I really love this palette. I wish I could say that I use it more than I do, but it's beautiful. I wouldn't even consider getting rid of it. Next are going to be a couple of tough ones. My kids did give me these two palettes from Makeup Revolution, and this one is the Fierce Wild Animal palette. And this one has some really cool shades in it. I do think the shades are really unique, and I like the color story in here. However, a lot like other experiences that I've had with Makeup Revolution, including the Tasty Avocado palette, these just don't last on my eyes the way other eyeshadows do. Not even other high-end shadows. My e.l.f. shadows are longer lasting than these. So I'm going to go ahead and unfortunately let this one go. And same with this one. This is the Makeup Revolution Tammy X Revolution Tropical Carnival Shadow Palette. These are so pretty. Again, I just love the colors in here, especially these two lighter shades. The lighter green and purple up here are so fun and so beautiful, but again, they just don't really last on my eyes. And to be honest, as much as I like these and they're special to me because they come from my kids, if I'm reaching for a rainbow type palette these days, which is, let's admit it, less than previous years, it would be my ABH shadows that I would reach for, my big Norvina palettes, which you'll see later, because they're just better quality in terms of application, and they actually will last on my eyeballs. Alright, next we have these two from Pixie Beauty. The first one is this Hello English Rose palette. Again, this is one that my son and daughter picked out for me. I do really like the shades in here. I just don't use this all that much. And I don't know, this one's hard, especially when Hannah's sitting over there staring at me. I just don't think I'm going to use this palette as much as I love it. And I love that my kids picked this out for me. Are you going to be sad, Hannah?
I'll take it.
She'll take it. Perfect. Then I don't feel bad. This palette, however, from Pixie, I do really like, and I do use, you know, with some regularity. This is the Eye Reflection Shadow Palette in the Natural Beauty colorway, and some of these metallics are just like crazy foiled in here, and I do really love them for all over the lid shades. and the mattes perform really well. And even though it's neutral, like if you look at it a little closer, you've got some pinkiness in here, some green going on over here. So it's a lot more versatile than what it actually looks like. Okie dokie. This is a tricky one. I do really like this palette actually. I do think I'll keep it for now. This is the You Can Be Magic Spell palette. The only downside for me for this palette is that I can't find it anywhere to link for you guys. But I do really like a lot of the metallics in here. I did use it quite a bit when I pulled it into a Shop My Stash at the end of 2020. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep it for now. And then this palette is my one and only from the brand Certify, which is an independent brand. This is the Affinity 2 palette, aka my blue and green dreams. I really love this palette, and what I need to do is remind myself that it's okay to reach into this palette just for these couple of duochromes or any of the other shimmers in here, and not reach into some of the brighter mattes if I don't want to. Part of me stops myself from using this at all if I don't only use this palette, and that just really doesn't make any sense, which is pretty typical. But either way, I do love this palette. I was so excited to get it, I remember, and I'm keeping it. And then lastly, my 3 e.l.f. palettes I'll go through really quickly. This is the new Classics from e.l.f. I love this. I repurchased this palette after I gave it away to my stepmom. It's really one of the best palettes that I have tried from the drugstore. Same with this one. This is the Earth and Ocean palette. I don't love every single shade in this palette. I definitely like to skip out on the shade Tundra because it's kind of a flaky, shenanigy mess. I don't know what that word was. But I love this palette, and I really love this shade called Sun Yourself. It's very unassuming but very unique. Last year, 2020, e.l.f. dropped this beautiful little bomb on us, and it is so fun. I love these shades. It was kind of one of those really unique color stories that people just went gaga for this year, and I can't blame them. I did multiple looks with this palette myself. It's, you know, if you cover up a little bit of the brighter shades here, you know, it's quite neutral, but then you do have those pops of color to add a little bit of fun. So take that for what you will, but I'm keeping it. All right, let's talk about some more affordable palettes. This is from C Colors Cosmetics. It's called The Frost. Picked this up last year when I picked up another palette that I really wanted from them. It's a really nice formula, and I can't even show you the whole palette. It's a really nice formula, and I really do like the color story in here. I am going to go ahead and keep it. It's possibly one I would consider getting rid of later in the year if I don't find myself reaching for it, however, because, you know, I just want to have a little bit of a lighter load this year when it comes to eyeshadow palettes. One I know I'm going to let go of, so let's go ahead and talk about it first. This is the Bad Habit Athena palette. I really did enjoy this palette quite a bit. It is meant to be a dupe for one of the Huda Beauty palettes. Is it the Desert Dusk maybe? And I remember purchasing it for some of these duochromes in here and then keeping it for this gorgeous little taupey number. But I didn't use this at all in 2020. It just isn't, I don't want to say it's not my jam anymore, but it's just not getting used. It's just taking up room in my drawer. I think someone else might get some love and usage out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and let this one go. Okay, let's talk dupe palettes. This is going to be hard too. I already know it. So this is the Alter Ego Sahara palette. I absolutely adore Alter Ego. This totally helped me fall in love with this color story, which is meant to be a dupe for the NATASHA DENONA Biba palette. And I did. I don't know if you can tell, but I loved on this palette so much over the summer. And then at the end of the summer, hubby surprised me and rewarded me for packing up our condo with the actual Biba palette. And yet I still find myself not wanting to let go of this one. And I don't know why that is. And it's one of those that I think if I do let it go, will I regret it? And it seems stupid because I have the exact same palette and a formula that I love even more, though this is a great formula. So I think I'm gonna be a big girl about it and just go ahead and let this one go. It's neutral, it's beautiful. I think I'll easily be able to find a new home for it. This one, however, is staying. This is the C Color Cosmetics Savannah palette. Being honest, I do prefer the Alter Ego formula over the C Color formula, but Alter Ego does not have a dupe for the NATASHA DENONA Safari palette yet. And this is what this is meant to be. And I do use it quite a bit. I do enjoy this. It is a good formula. I think Alter Ego would do it better, but neither here nor there because I'm keeping it. This is the Alter Ego Aurora palette, meant to be a dupe for the NATASHA DENONA Sunrise palette. And I've talked about before how I think I'm really glad I bought this palette as a dupe and not, you know, at the full $65 price, because while I do like this color story sometimes, I don't know that I'll use it enough to warrant, you know, the $65 price tag. This was enough. I got, you know, kind of got this color story out of my system, so to speak, but I am going to keep it. And my last dupe palette is the Artemis palette from Alter Ego. This is meant to dupe the NATASHA DENONA Metropolis palette. And I am, again, really glad that I ended up picking up the dupe palette versus the full-size palette. That one was outrageously expensive, and while I love this color story, it's again not one I dip into all the time, plus I have a ton of palettes, so I'm happy with this one. I really enjoyed, I don't remember if I did 7 or 10 looks, but you can definitely check that out in my eyeshadow playlist, because all of the videos I've done with these palettes can all be found there, and that I will definitely have linked below. And now we come down to BH. This is gonna be hard. This is gonna be really hard. Okay, well, let's start with these two newer ones. One I'm definitely keeping is the Smitten in Switzerland palette. Man, did I have a lot of fun with this palette, and this newer formula from BH Cosmetics is very, very special. It's very foiled and just really, I don't know, I don't even have the words for it. Smooth, just, I mean, I can't, can you even? Look at that, gorgeous. But yeah, I love this new formula and format from BH Cosmetics. They've done this travel one, they've done some brunch ones, I mean the whole thing, so they are nice palettes. Then I also got the Summer in Saint-Tropez, and this is a really fun color story. I am a sucker for a duochrome, so that also got me hooked, but this is just kind of a fun, unique little palette, I think, for the warmer seasons. Now we come down to these puppies, and it's so hard. I don't think I used, this is the Weekend Festival palette. It's been discontinued for some time, and I don't think I used this at all in 2020, and I don't know. I don't feel like I'm ready to get rid of it, so I'm not going to, but I do think I need to really consider that if I go all the way through 2021 without using a palette that I had prior to 2021, it's probably just time to get rid of it. So I don't know, we'll see, but this is a beautiful palette nonetheless. And then the Royal Affair palette is one of my favorites out of my collection. Has some really cool shades in here, like these over here, Crown and Throne. They're really beautiful shades, and it's otherwise a great neutral palette, and it was a gift from Angela, so I'm going to keep that one. And last but certainly not least, we have the ZODIAC palette. This is another one
I'm pretty sure I used this a couple of times in 2020, and it's, you know, it's older. It takes up a lot of room in my collection. I do have probably most of these shades in other palettes, but at the same time, I'm loath to get rid of it. I don't know why. This is my favorite shade in the palette. It's called Aquarius, and it's like this gold shifting lime green. Holy moly. What do I do? What do you think, Hannah?
Well, I think you got it like in 2019 or 2018. So it's pretty old and you haven't used it that much. So maybe you declutter it to someone else.
That's a good idea. I think she's right. I have had this since 2018, so yeah, it probably is time to go ahead and let it go. And I'm sure I could find someone that would want to try this formula. Hannah raises her hand in the background. So I'm going to be a big girl and let this one go. All right, here are a few random palettes. This first one is the MAC Classic Cutie palette. I got this free with, it was like a gift with purchase. It's really pretty, and I do love purple eyeshadow. I just don't reach for this one. And I know that either Hannah or Angela would probably really enjoy this palette. So I'm just going to go ahead and let go of this one. I went ahead and got it because, you know, it was the free gift or whatever. But I don't think I ever necessarily planned on keeping it in my collection forever. It does have a really pretty, it does have a really pretty highlight in it as well. So I was pretty sure I was going to go ahead and declutter this one, and I'm going to. And then we have my other MAC palette. And this is the MAC Art Library Nude Model palette. It has some of their existing shades in here, and I don't know if there's any new ones, but I do really like this palette. It's a nice little neutral palette, good shades, you know, possible candidate for panning in the future, who knows, but I'm going to keep this one for now. Alright, next we have my one KKW Beauty palette, or product, really. This is the Classic Blossom palette, and it is so pretty. I do really like her formula, and I enjoyed, you know, getting to know this palette last year when I purchased it. All of the mattes are super duper soft and silky, and the shimmers really pack a nice punch, so I'm going to keep that one. Then we have an old standby staple, the Tarte Clay Play palette. I like this. There's a time where I really seriously considered decluttering this, but as I put it into my Shop My Stash last year, I really grew to love these two like bronzer and contour shades down here. You know, I've worn off almost all of the embossing on this palette in terms of the eyeshadow. It just really comes in handy, especially when you have a palette that's more of like a companion palette. This is one that's just really easy to grab for, and I probably have everything I need in here, so definitely keeping that one. And then lastly, we have my two Charlotte Tilbury bigger palettes. You already saw the quad earlier. This was my first one. This is the Starry Eyes to Hypnotize palette from Holiday 2019. And this is what it looks like. I have used a lot of this palette. I really enjoy this. It's a great easy one to grab on the everyday because you already have these trios set up for you. But if you want to box outside of the trios, you certainly can do that too. And then this year, or last year I guess, 2020, Holiday 2020, this is the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotize palette. Both absolutely stunning with packaging, and other than the 4 looks I did with this palette, I haven't gotten to use it too much just because I have too much, hence the declutter today. But I do love this palette, the color story. Love this rich brownie bronze shade, so I'm looking forward to getting to use this more in 2021. All right, let's talk about a few one-offers here. This is the Tati Beauty Don't Throw Things at Your Screen Textured Neutrals Volume 1 palette. I like this palette. Do I think it was earth-shaking as so many people made it out to be when it came out? No. But it is a nice formula. I do enjoy it. And I will say that these pressed glitters in here are the only ones I will actually put on my eyes. They are, you know, well suspended in a material that actually does hold them on your eyes for a good amount of time. And when paired with a glitter glue, they're beautiful. So I am going to keep this palette, though, you know, we'll see how much I use it in 2021, whether it makes it through the next declutter. And then I have this Sephora Pro Pigment Palette Editorial 2.0. I really enjoy this palette. It's got such a unique color story, in my opinion. Just very eye-catching. This shade, as it slowly crumbles, is a little annoying, but like these chartreuse greens I don't have anywhere else in my collection. There's some really cool duochromes in here, so overall I'm just really glad I got this palette. I love the matte shades they also included in here, so I'm definitely keeping this one. And then there was this girl right here. Man, Hannah thinks I should get rid of it. I think she's probably right though. So I did attempt to pan this palette at one point, and I feel like I did a decently good job. The only shadows that I feel like I might miss would be like this one right here and this one right here. But I guarantee I have those shades in my palette, in my other palettes. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it's time. I don't think I used her but maybe one time in 2020, and you know, probably because I got really good use out of her in 2019. So I do think I'm gonna let this one go. I don't reach for it. I don't even reach for it for any kind of comparison sake. However, with a caveat, if I don't find someone that wants to take this palette off my hands, I will probably depot some of the shades that I want to keep, because there are some shades in here that I wouldn't mind keeping and, you know, having in my collection as singles. So we'll see what happens. Then we have my two Violet Voss palettes. This one I got in a Boxy Charm, I believe. This is the Holy Grail palette. And while this looks quite boring, you know, neutral with kind of like this berry situation going on down here in the corner, I really like this formula a lot, and there's quite a few shades in here. I know my friend Angela, this is like one of her favorite shades in her collection. It's called Cool Beans, and it's just like that perfect like bronzy brown shade. Hello, Apple Watch. So yeah, definitely keeping this one. I really enjoy the formula. Now this guy down here is another toughie. This is the Flamingo palette. I'm not getting rid of it. I'm just keeping this one. I love this palette. I don't care how much, if I only reach for it twice a year. I love the shades in this palette. And now that I'm back to project panning, it's, you know, I can work on this. I can get some better use out of it this year, so I'm definitely going to keep it. And lastly, these are my three Lorac palettes, starting with the Luxe Diamond palette. I like this palette. It's not my favorite palette. It definitely can come off a little boring, but I think what's exciting in this palette is actually the textures. And when you get them on the eyes and you see those textures, it really is quite stunning. It really is quite glam, and I just love my Lorac shadows, so I'm going to keep that one. My least used and newest Lorac palette is my Mega Pro 4, and I have pulled this into Shop My Stash one or two times, and I've reached for it otherwise. Again, I love my Lorac shadows. I think these are definitely some beautiful shades that I can make use out of, and maybe work on panning this one at some point. So definitely keeping that, but also really love my Mega Pro 2, and you will be able to see that because I have quite a few pans in here. I'm currently working on panning a few shades in here, so definitely not going anywhere this year. I will say that I can kind of very minimally that this one is getting older just by the texture and the fact that I have to build the shadows a little bit more than I used to, but meanwhile, you know, I'm keeping it. This is my chocolate gold palette and probably my current favorite of the three that I still have. I just love these shades and they're so just lovely to have on hand. This is like my go-to kind of glam glittery palette, so I love this. If you really want to see some good damage on this particular palette, go check out my girl Angela at Beauty and Life with Angela. She's working on panning this. And then another palette that I just would never ever get rid of, even if I just don't use it on my face anymore, is my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. And this was my very first high-end palette, but my hubby took me to go purchase this. And I still love it. Like, this shade Luscious is just stunning. Like, I just would reach into this palette for that shade. Barely. Oh yeah, she's definitely losing her scent. Well, anywhoozle, I'm definitely keeping this. I love this palette. This is the one that I'm considering letting go of. It does have a couple of really beautiful shades. Love Spiced Eggnog. Love some of the mattes in here for sure. But I feel like partially I'm over the brand, and secondly, this was never a favorite for me. It just let me down quite a bit. These 4 shades over here are just so freaking chunky and crumbly and fallout and the whole thing, so I just really don't love this one. I don't know, I just don't love this palette and I don't need to keep it. It was kind of an impulse purchase, and you know, it really only held my attention for a short time after I got it, and you know, like I said, I was kind of disappointed in it. So I do think I'm going to go ahead and let that go. I really want to just look into my collection and see things that I want to use and not see things that make me feel guilty that I should use them, if that makes sense. Alright, let's talk about all this right here. This is not an eyeshadow palette. This is a highlighter palette, but I don't use it as a highlighter palette. I like to use these as eyeshadows, inner corner highlights, those type of things, and I really haven't had it for all that long, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold on to that. And then we have my 3 ABH Norvina palettes. This is volume uno, and this is definitely my favorite of the 3. I do get quite a bit more use out of this one than the other 2, but it, you know, these are just a really great quality, and like I was talking about with the Makeup Revolution palettes earlier, if I want a bright fluorescent or rainbow shadow, I'm going to look into these 3 I'm going to reach into these 3 palettes right here for it. So I'm definitely keeping all 3, but there's volume 1. This is volume 2. A lot more summery, maybe even spring in my opinion, but I do really like a lot of the shades in this palette. And then I have volume 3. I do love the fall color story, summer to fall color story of this palette. I will say, however, this is the one I like the least, and mostly because the lack of and quality of shimmers in this palette, but it's still a really nice palette, don't get me wrong. It's just, you know, not everybody can be a favorite. All right, and then there were these ABH palettes. So let's go through the ones I know I'm not getting rid of. The first one is the Carly Bible palette, probably in my top 3 ABH palettes of all time. I just really like this color story. It's very Kyra, it's very easy, it can be every day for me, or I can amp it up, so I'm keeping it. Another fave is the Sultry palette. I had this in my Shop My Stash in December. Just some real beautiful staples here, shades that I definitely reached just into this palette for. So I'm going to keep that one. My newest ABH palette is, of course, the Jackie Aina palette. Again, some really beautiful shades in here that I reached strictly into this palette for, and not even just these beautiful shimmers, but I love the mattes in here as well. Then we have the OG Norvina, and this is in my Shop My Stash for the month of January. As you can see, another favorite of mine, right up there with Carly. In fact, I think this palette and the Carly Bible palette would pair really beautifully together. But this is just definitely my jam in terms of a color story, so I'm going to keep that one. And then the last one I'm sure I want to keep is the Soft Glam palette. And this is a really beautiful palette as well. It's a great neutral palette with, you know, some interesting pops in here. I love the inclusion of a Dusty Rose matte. I love this burgundy kind of bronze shimmer called Sultry. They're all gorgeous, and it's just, you know, it's a great palette. So these are the two that I'm considering letting go of. They are my least used and my oldest. To be honest, I don't know though. I just didn't know. All right, well, let's look at them. This is the Modern Renaissance. And it's, again, it's a really beautiful neutral palette. I don't love the reds or the pink up here, but I do like the rest of the palette. I love the shimmers. I'm going to keep it for now. And then the other one I've considered multiple times whether to keep or get rid of is ABH Subculture. But again, I'm kind of loath to get rid of it because of these grungy tones that I think I would really have to kind of search out in my collection. So even though both Cube and Electric have hard pan in them, I can't let go of this. I really enjoy the mattes in this palette, so there we go, I'm keeping it. Okay, these are my Urban Decay palettes. Probably don't even know that I own the Naked Honey palette, but I do. I got this half off during the Ulta 21 Days of Beauty or Christmas sale, Black Friday sale. Yeah, Black Friday sale. Super excited to have this. Not sure why I waited so long, but it is a part of my collection. Then I have the Ultraviolet palette, and I'm pretty sure I was one of the only people that gave this a rave review, but I stand by my word. I do really love this palette. I love the purples. I like the more blue tones. And I love this little neutral half of the palette that just coordinates perfectly with the not so neutral side. So I really like that one. Kind of redeemed the Naked palettes for me, if you will. And then I have the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. I love this palette. I love the tones. I like this sort of muted quality of the shades in here, but still like jewel toned. So I'm gonna keep that one. And then this one is another tricky one. My hubby picked out this palette for me. It's discontinued, so it's hard to include in certain videos, but there's also a handful of shades in here that I just don't think I could stand to be without either. So I think I'll just probably end up keeping it, but it's really pretty and it's a fun palette to reach into now and again. So I guess I'm gonna have to figure out how to store this for another year. A couple of other one-offers and some of my newest palettes to my collection. First is the Sigma Enchanted palette. Comes with the double-sided brush that it actually works. And I have yet to put this on my eyeballs, but let me know what kind of content or how many looks you might want to see with this, because this is going to be the palette of the month for February, I believe. And then we have the Sydney Grace Enduring Love palette. This is the light version. And I love this palette. If you missed it, I just recently did 7 looks with this palette, so I'll link that one down below for sure. Persona Identity palette, not going anywhere. I am working on this shade called Seductive currently in my 21 pans in 2021. And just overall, this is one of my favorite palettes in my collection, along with her beautiful sister who has her jewel tones inside. Same beautiful formula and just absolutely stunning shades in here. And yeah, not going anywhere. And then this was a super fun find in 2020. This is the Pat McGrath's Labs Mothership Mega Celestial Divinity super long name eyeshadow palette. And this is my first and only Pat McGrath palette. Love playing with this, super fun tones in here, and especially for a holiday palette, I just think this was a really cool launch last year. And then all that were left were the Natasha Denona palettes. And you know I'm not getting rid of any of these, but this is the Mini Retro palette, or as I like to call it, the Mini Kyra palette. These are my 60s and 70 type tones, and I hope she makes a midi size palette of this one this year. Then we have the Mini Glam palette, another fantastic palette. Just something a little bit more unique than your traditional champagne, gold, bronze glam palette. Then I believe this was my first Natasha Denona palette, and I'm definitely planning to work on hitting pan in a few shades in here this year. This is the Mini Star palette. Love. And then let's do middies next. This is the Glam palette, part of Holiday 2020, I believe. It was part of the holiday collection, and I really, really enjoy just the neutral nature of this palette, being able to do everyday and glam looks with neutral shadows in my favorite formula, which is Natasha Denona. Then we have this bright baby here, and while she's not my most used Natasha Denona palette, I do love this palette. It's just one that I tend to want to add some neutral, crease or neutral transition shade to when using it. And the last mid-size palette is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. I really enjoyed this one this year. I love the inclusion of this blue sort of indigo situation up here, along with all the rest of all this warmth. It's a really beautiful palette. This suntan shade seems so like nothing, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful shade. So I'm really glad I got this one this year too. And then there were 4. So like I said earlier, I did get the Natasha Denona Biba palette from my hubby right before we bought our home, and I love this palette. Looking at all of its splendor, I feel reassured that I do not need to keep the Alter Ego palette, even for comparison purposes. I just want to own the shadows that I want to use. Then we have the TRIOCHROME palette, and holy moly, this is beautiful. I just love this. I love the mattes in here. I love these triochromes or duochromes or whatever you want to call them, but the mattes are what really spoke to me in this palette, and I am so glad. I cannot wait to mix them up with my neutral Natasha Denona shadows, as well as some of my other Natasha Denona shadows. So I'm really excited about this. Let me know what kind of content you guys would like to see with any of these palettes. But I am thinking about doing a month where I mix all of my Natasha Denona shadows together in a Shop My Stash and just like create looks combining the different palettes. This is the Natasha Denona Gold palette. Definitely a stunning favorite. And yeah, I just think this is such a good palette, such a good curation of shades, and probably one of my most used thus far. But you wouldn't know it to look at it, because this was this was my first full-size Natasha Denona palette. This is Leela, in case you haven't met her. And I definitely have gotten usage out of this one. I love the shades in here. There's just so much unique shades in here. I don't know, that's definitely not English, but yeah, yum, yum, yum. Get you some. I love this. I'm out of words. That is it. Those are all of my palettes. So let's quickly recap on how many palettes I am getting rid of. 10.
Yay.
Exactly. Oh wait, oh no. 11. I had to move Jacqueline over here out of the frame because she's so big. The palette, that is. You guys be nice. Anyhow, that is the end of my eyeshadow palette collection. I'm going to put on the screen somewhere in here how many I have left after decluttering 11. Wowza. You guys, I know I have a lot. And this won't be the last declutter this year. It'll be the last collection video of 2021. I'll do it again in 2022. But I will definitely have declutter videos throughout the year as I continue to work with my collection and find things that either aren't working for me anymore or that I just don't want to work with anymore. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hannah, say thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.
And I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful eyeshadow makeup days, and I'll see you in the last collection video tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.